Well, I don't want to tell you exactly, but we are certainly looking at land now because we've got the sea very well under control.
At dawn, the calm waters of the Caribbean turned tense. The USS Gerald R. Ford, America's largest and most advanced aircraft carrier, is moving south. Its radar arrays sweeping wide, its deck loaded with more than 75 aircraft and over 5,000 sailors on alert. Officially, it is a routine deployment under U.S. Southern Command. Unofficially, it feels like something bigger. The timing is no coincidence. Tensions with Venezuela are rising fast, and every movement in these waters is now being watched. Satellite images show support ships shadowing the carrier, and electronic signatures hint that an entire strike group has taken position near disputed routes once used by smuggling networks. Yet Washington has said little, and Caracas says even less. The question now is simple, but the answer could change everything. Why is America's most powerful warship sitting so close to Venezuela? Before we uncover what's really happening beneath those calm waves, make sure you subscribe to Military Power, because the next move of this carrier group could reshape the balance of the entire Caribbean. The United States Navy has positioned one of its most formidable carrier strike groups near Venezuela, signaling a major escalation in regional security operations. The USS Gerald R. Ford, the Navy's newest and largest aircraft carrier, leads the formation. This warship alone carries around 5,000 sailors and supports a powerful air wing of more than 75 aircraft, including FA-18 Super Hornets, E-2D Hawkeyes, and MH-60R helicopters. According to defense sources, its escorts include several Arleigh Burke-class destroyers and a fast-attack submarine equipped for both surveillance and precision strike missions. Together, they form a self-contained military force capable of projecting power across the entire Caribbean basin. By late October 2025, at least 8 American warships were confirmed to be operating in the region, with reports suggesting that number could soon reach 10. Naval tracking data shows the presence of additional support vessels and logistics ships, which ensure that the strike group can remain at sea for extended operations. The total manpower involved is estimated at over 9,000 sailors and Marines, combining the Ford Carrier Strike Group with the Amphibious Ready Group that deployed from Norfolk in August 2025. This scale of deployment is far beyond what is required for normal counter-narcotics patrols, implying a broader strategic objective. The movement of such a force is never random. Each element serves a distinct purpose, from air dominance to anti-submarine warfare and intelligence gathering. The carrier provides airborne early warning and strike capabilities, while the destroyers use the Aegis combat system to detect and intercept potential threats. The submarine adds stealth and the ability to monitor underwater approaches. Supporting these are refueling ships and supply vessels that keep the group operational for months without the need to dock. This integrated formation gives the United States continuous situational awareness and the ability to respond immediately to any provocation in or near Venezuelan waters. As the strike group maintains its silent watch off Venezuela's coast, observers expect the next stage to involve diplomatic and intelligence coordination. The deployment is both a signal and a shield, marking the point where deterrence meets readiness. The next question is how Caracas and its allies will interpret this message, as the focus shifts toward Washington's accusations against Venezuela's leadership. The U.S. government has intensified its accusations against Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, claiming that he oversees a powerful criminal organization known as the Cartel de los Soles. American intelligence assessments describe this network as a fusion of senior military officers, government officials, and trafficking operatives who manage one of the largest drug pipelines in the Western Hemisphere. The group is alleged to control routes that move between 350 and 500 tons of cocaine each year through the Caribbean towards Central America and the United States. For Washington, this scale of criminal activity turns Venezuela from a domestic concern into a strategic threat that extends beyond its borders. The U.S. Treasury Department has already imposed sanctions on multiple Venezuelan military and political figures accused of participating in the cartel's operations. These measures target individuals' assets, restrict financial transactions, and block access to international banking systems. By classifying the Cartel de los Soles as a transnational criminal organization, the United States effectively elevates the issue from law enforcement to national security. Officials argue that such networks not only fund corruption, but also undermine regional stability by supporting paramilitary groups and money laundering channels. The financial flows connected to Venezuelan officials are now under closer scrutiny by agencies monitoring offshore transactions in Panama, Curacao, and the Dominican Republic. Washington's allegations also point to a broader structure of criminal governance within Venezuela itself. Analysts describe how elements of the armed forces, particularly within the National Guard, are believed to protect drug shipments in exchange for revenue and political loyalty. Airfields in western Venezuela and coastal ports near Falcon and Sucre are frequently identified as key transit points. Intelligence reports suggest that profits from these routes are reinvested into political campaigns and state-controlled enterprises, allowing the regime to sustain itself despite sanctions and economic isolation. The pattern, according to regional observers, reflects how a criminal economy can replace legitimate governance in a country struggling with hyperinflation and dwindling oil revenue. From the U.S. perspective, such conditions justify stronger countermeasures. The combination of narcotics trafficking, money laundering, and political corruption represents a direct challenge to international law and maritime security. American naval and air operations in the Caribbean are therefore framed as necessary steps to limit the cartel's influence and to prevent its operations from expanding northward. These efforts are coordinated with allies such as Colombia, the Netherlands, and France, which maintain monitoring posts and patrols in nearby waters. The accusations against Maduro's government have thus moved beyond rhetoric, becoming a cornerstone of Washington's regional security policy. As tensions continue to build, the U.S. posture is shifting from accusation to demonstration. The recent military flights and carrier movements near Venezuelan territory are viewed as signals of readiness, suggesting that Washington intends to match its words with visible power. The focus now turns to the skies, where the presence of American bombers will soon reveal how far this confrontation is prepared to go. Supersonic bomber missions near Venezuela have drawn global attention, as the United States demonstrates a level of readiness rarely seen in the Caribbean. On October 27, 2025, flight tracking data confirmed that 2 U.S. Air Force B-1B Lancer bombers flew close to the Venezuelan coastline before turning back toward international airspace. The operation was conducted under U.S. Southern Command, but its timing, coinciding with the movement of the USS Gerald R carrier strike group, suggests a deliberate message of deterrence. The B-1, capable of flying at speeds above 1,400 kilometers per hour and carrying up to 34 metric tons of precision-guided munitions, represents one of the most powerful non-nuclear strike platforms in the American arsenal. These aircraft did not act alone. Since early September 2025, 10 F-35B Lightning II fighters have been forward deployed to Puerto Rico. This deployment gives the United States an immediate tactical advantage, allowing short takeoff and vertical landing operations from austere or dispersed bases across the Caribbean. The pairing of F-35s with B-1 bombers extends Washington's surveillance and strike coverage by hundreds of kilometers, ensuring that every movement near Venezuelan waters can be tracked and, if necessary, intercepted. It also allows the U.S. to simulate complex joint missions combining stealth technology with long-range bomber support. The B-1's flight near Venezuela was not an isolated patrol, but part of a broader pattern of air operations that reinforced the Navy's maritime presence. The aircraft's radar and communication systems were likely used to test electronic signatures and map coastal defenses. Such exercises provide valuable data on reaction times and radar frequencies used by Venezuela's air defense network. By conducting these missions without violating sovereign airspace, the United States demonstrates its ability to operate freely within international law while projecting credible power just outside Venezuelan territory. The logistics behind such missions highlight the depth of American capability. Each B-1 flight requires aerial refueling support, coordination with regional air traffic controllers, and satellite-based command networks that connect with naval assets in real time. This level of integration transforms the Caribbean into a monitored battle space where information and speed matter more than size. The presence of F-35s in Puerto Rico further reduces the time needed for interception or surveillance, tightening the operational circle around Venezuela's coastline. Observers note that the United States has revived tactics reminiscent of Cold War signaling, where aircraft and ships operated visibly near adversaries to maintain deterrence through presence. In this case, the flights are part of a layered pressure strategy that combines air power, naval deployment, and economic sanctions. Together, they create a multi-domain warning that Washington is prepared for escalation, but prefers control through precision and visibility. As these aircraft return to base, the message they leave behind remains clear. The Caribbean is no longer a quiet zone of commerce, but a strategic corridor watched by the most advanced air and naval systems in the world. The next stage of this operation will focus on expanding intelligence, surveillance, and precision targeting, rather than direct confrontation, as the United States moves toward a new form of deterrence built on information dominance and rapid response. The United States has made it clear that its approach toward Venezuela will not depend on massive troop landings or territorial invasion. Instead, Washington's strategy relies on intelligence, surveillance, and precision strike capabilities designed to achieve maximum impact with minimum risk. The U.S. military believes that information dominance and accuracy now matter more than raw force projection. This method allows American forces to control escalation while maintaining constant pressure on the Maduro regime and its allied networks. The core of this strategy is built on advanced technology. The U.S. Air Force and Navy have expanded their use of MQ-9 Reaper drones across the Caribbean and the northern coast of South America. These unmanned systems can operate for more than 20 hours at a time and carry both reconnaissance sensors and precision munitions. By combining real-time intelligence with long-endurance flight, the drones give Washington near-continuous visibility over maritime routes once dominated by smugglers. Alongside these aircraft, several Arleigh Burke-class destroyers equipped with Tomahawk cruise missiles are maintaining patrols in international waters. The presence of these ships enhances the United States' ability to launch accurate strikes on coastal targets or moving vessels without ever crossing into Venezuelan territory. This combination of aerial surveillance and naval precision forms a modern version of deterrence that minimizes collateral damage. American commanders view it as a way to pressure adversaries while avoiding civilian casualties or prolonged ground operations. The technology-driven approach has become a model for how the U.S. projects power in contested regions. It reflects lessons learned from previous interventions, where large-scale invasions often created political and humanitarian complications. In the Caribbean theater, precision has replaced mass as the principal measure of strength. Venezuela, by contrast, faces severe military and logistical weaknesses. Although President Nicolas Maduro has claimed the mobilization of more than 4.5 million militia members, independent defense organizations estimate that the actual number of active personnel is closer to 343,000. most of these fighters lack modern training, consistent pay, or adequate equipment. The Venezuelan Air Force continues to rely on outdated Soviet-era aircraft, including Su-30 Mk-2 fighters and aging transport planes, many of which are grounded due to lack of spare parts. The country's radar coverage is fragmented, leaving significant blind spots along its coastlines and borders. Such limitations make it difficult for Venezuela to respond effectively to the sophisticated surveillance systems now operating nearby. Analysts note that the imbalance between American precision technology and Venezuela's aging defenses creates a one-sided military environment. The United States can detect, track, and target movements within minutes, while Venezuelan forces struggle even to maintain communications across regions. This asymmetry discourages direct confrontation and pushes Caracas toward defensive posturing. The government has increased propaganda about resisting foreign aggression, but most observers view it as an attempt to rally domestic support rather than a realistic military plan. The broader implication is that modern warfare no longer depends on large armies or heavy armor. It is shaped by networks of sensors, drones, and guided weapons that allow limited yet decisive use of force. The United States has refined this doctrine to maintain control through speed, precision, and situational awareness. For Washington, this approach preserves credibility without the cost of occupation, showing that deterrence can exist without invasion. As these surveillance and strike systems continue their silent watch, the strategic message becomes clear. The U.S. intends to deter, disrupt, and disable threats before they reach American shores. Every radar pulse and drone feed now forms part of a larger pattern aimed at constraining Venezuela's actions. All these developments are leading toward one outcome: a controlled escalation designed to prevent chaos while tightening the noose around illicit networks. The next step in this unfolding operation will reveal how Washington plans to sustain pressure while keeping the balance of power firmly in its favor. The United States views its growing military presence near Venezuela as both a deterrent against narcotics trafficking and a calculated effort to apply pressure on the Maduro regime. The Pentagon estimates that recent operations in the Caribbean have effectively disrupted smuggling routes responsible for moving between 150 and 500 tons of cocaine each year. This reduction is not only a blow to criminal syndicates, but also a direct challenge to the financial networks that sustain Venezuela's ruling structure. By tightening control over maritime corridors, Washington aims to isolate Caracas economically and politically without resorting to open conflict. This deployment represents the largest American naval mobilization in the Caribbean since the 1960s, involving carrier, destroyer, and submarine operations coordinated with air and satellite surveillance. The combination of sea and air assets creates a permanent monitoring system capable of identifying, tracking, and intercepting suspicious vessels in real time. In addition to direct interdiction missions, intelligence sharing has intensified with regional partners such as Colombia, the Netherlands, and the Dominican Republic. Their joint patrols now cover vast sections of the Caribbean Sea that were once considered uncontested smuggling zones. For the United States, this multinational approach amplifies its reach while distributing operational costs among allies. The strategic aim is clear: to make drug trafficking from Venezuela increasingly costly and dangerous. Every intercepted shipment weakens the financial lifeline of the networks connected to the Cartel de los Soles and narrows the options available to the regime. By disrupting these flows, Washington undercuts both the criminal profits and the political influence that narcotics revenue has provided. The United States is combining its military pressure with sanctions and financial restrictions that target Venezuelan state enterprises suspected of laundering cartel money. The coordination between the Department of Defense, the Treasury, and international financial watchdogs reflects a broad campaign that links maritime security to economic enforcement. Analysts point out that this approach is not purely military, but also psychological. The constant visibility of U.S. warships and aircraft in regional waters sends a message to both smugglers and government officials that the margin for illicit activity is shrinking. It also reassures Caribbean nations that Washington is prepared to defend shared interests and regional stability. The deterrent effect arises not from the prospect of invasion, but from the realization that any illegal movement can now be detected within minutes. Modern surveillance systems combine radar, infrared imaging, and satellite tracking, producing a level of transparency that few criminal networks can evade. At the same time, the United States must balance deterrence with restraint. A prolonged deployment risks fueling anti-American sentiment in parts of Latin America, where memories of past interventions remain sensitive. To manage this perception, American officials emphasize cooperation, humanitarian aid, and disaster relief operations alongside military activity. This dual message, strength paired with partnership, helps maintain legitimacy while sustaining pressure on the Venezuelan regime. The goal is to show that the United States can enforce stability without destabilizing the region it seeks to protect. As the campaign continues, the effects are becoming visible. Smuggling incidents in the Caribbean have dropped sharply since mid-2025, while the number of Venezuelan flagged vessels intercepted by Allied navies has increased by over 20%. Each successful interdiction limits the regime's access to hard currency and deepens its economic isolation. The American presence therefore operates as both shield and signal, a shield against transnational crime and a signal that Washington intends to contain corruption before it crosses the sea. Yet this posture also carries risk, for every escalation invites reaction. The next phase will depend on how Venezuela and its partners abroad choose to respond to this tightening ring of deterrence. Analysts outline three potential directions for the current standoff between the United States and Venezuela: de-escalation, limited kinetic action, or unintended escalation. Each path carries unique consequences that extend beyond the Caribbean. The situation remains fluid, as the U.S. declared on October 1st, 2025, that it is engaged in a non-international armed conflict with transnational cartels operating from South America. This classification provides legal grounds for targeted military operations while avoiding the label of full-scale war. Yet the growing complexity of these missions is evident. By November 2nd, at least 41 civilians had been reported killed across the Caribbean region during interdiction and counter-trafficking actions, reflecting the real cost of a campaign unfolding close to populated coastal areas. The first and most desirable scenario involves de-escalation. This outcome would require Venezuelan authorities to restrict cartel activities and reopen limited channels of communication with Washington. A reduction in maritime incidents, or a shift in Venezuelan domestic policy, could allow both sides to claim success without direct confrontation. However, such progress depends on political stability within Caracas and the willingness of allied states like Cuba and Nicaragua to support a diplomatic compromise. The second scenario envisions limited kinetic strikes against cartel infrastructure or armed convoys moving through Venezuelan waters. These operations would likely involve precision weapons launched from destroyers or long-range aircraft, producing immediate tactical effects, but also carrying the risk of collateral damage and foreign reaction. The final and most dangerous path is unintended escalation. A single miscalculation, such as an airspace violation or a misidentified vessel, could trigger a chain reaction leading to wider hostilities. If Russian or Chinese advisors were present within Venezuelan military facilities, even a minor strike could escalate into a broader geopolitical dispute. The flow of refugees, already estimated in the millions, could intensify as regional insecurity rises. Each scenario therefore demands careful calibration between deterrence and restraint. The United States now faces the challenge of maintaining pressure without crossing the line into prolonged conflict. The next phase will depend on how these warning signs evolve in the coming weeks. Observers are watching for changes in naval positioning, increased flight activity, or shifts in Venezuela's political posture. These developments will determine whether the situation moves toward resolution or slides into confrontation. This deployment marks a decisive moment in U.S. hemispheric policy, signaling that Washington now relies on precision and deterrence rather than occupation to safeguard its interests. The presence of the USS Gerald R. Ford and its escort ships near Venezuela demonstrates a long-term shift in how the United States manages threats across the Caribbean. It is no longer about projecting force through invasion, but about maintaining control through intelligence, technology, and rapid reaction. Yet the stakes remain high, for each movement of ships and aircraft carries the potential to reshape alliances and redefine boundaries of influence in the region. The next phase of this operation will be measured not by rhetoric, but by observable indicators. Analysts will track the frequency of B-1, B-52, and F-35 sorties near Venezuelan airspace, along with updated positions of the Gerald R. Ford and its supporting vessels. New sanctions or high-level arrests linked to the Cartel de los Soles will also reveal the pressure level Washington intends to maintain. Rising numbers of intercepted or destroyed smuggling boats will show whether the blockade is tightening. Regional responses from Venezuela, Colombia, Guyana, or distant partners such as Russia and China will determine whether this deterrent holds or hardens into confrontation. The tension over the Caribbean is far from over, and every move from now on could shift the balance of power across the region. Don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments below, and subscribe to Military Power to stay ahead of every new development in this unfolding story.